FM Newstalk 97.1.
On-demand audio. Allman in the morning. Common Sense Radio.
7:37. It is Good Friday, and heading into a beautiful Easter weekend. You see, Easter is beautiful whether it's raining or not, as you all know, right? We'll talk about that and take your phone calls and talk about some redistricting and talk about Governor Rick Perry and his proclamation for the 3-day period of prayer for rain in Texas. And also about the possibility that Obama will get a new vice presidential partner when he runs in 2012. We'll see about that. And Mike Huckabee and Glenn Beck apparently are feuding. But what else is new, right? Senator Roy Blunt, welcome to the program, my friend.
It's good to be with you again.
Here
in the studio.
Andrea and I and Aiden and I had the distinct pleasure of sitting down and having dinner at Cafe Napoli a couple of weeks ago with you and your lovely wife, Abby, and your darling little one, Charlie. Oh, my goodness gracious. You all should have seen Charlie and Aiden and the two sets of parents. Right. We actually got it through. We made it through.
We made it
great
through.
Discussion,
we made it through. And Aiden, they're both about the same age, and they liked all the same things, and they had a great time.
It was a great time, and
I don't
really
know either of them liked dinner, but they liked all the other things that were going on.
They certainly did.
It's like the classic: take your kid to the restaurant and bring something for him to play with.
Listen, we were pretty courageous too, because we were right in the middle of the restaurant.
We were right in the middle. They did put us right in the middle.
Were they running circles around the table or anything?
No, that's one thing we didn't let them do. They never got up, right?
That's right.
I think
they didn't get up, but they liked each other and they had a big time.
They did have a good time, and Charlie is darling, and
he's a good guy.
He's a good
Darling's
little
a word
guy.
I usually don't use, but he's not the worst boy I've ever seen.
He certainly has a lot of charisma.
Oh, he does have that.
He's got a lot of character. He does. So thank you very much for that. It was a pleasure to be with you.
I
want to ask you about a number of things. One is this poll regarding Medicare, and I have a hard time actually believing it, and I'm not. But I'll take it for what it is, showing that about 70% of people in the Tea Party don't want Medicare or Social Security meddled with. Is that a surprising figure to you?
Well, it's not shocking to me. I've actually had that sense the whole time that you'd rather not have these programs that you think are fair and that you've paid into and you have a sense should be there for you to have anything done with them. But the truth is that the programs as they're working right now won't work that way for very much longer. Of course, if you're on the other side of this debate, if you're the president of the United States, he's out there all the time, as is Nancy Pelosi, saying that any change anybody mentions to these programs is designed to hurt old people and to destroy people's standard of living who are already retired. And all you've got to do is just pay attention to the debate to know that that's not true at all. In fact, every discussion starts with something like nobody over 55, sometimes it's nobody over 50, will be affected by these changes in any way. And that's another reason, Jamie, we need to get them done as soon as we can, because if you're not going to affect anybody over 55, it's a decade or more before you have any impact at all in the effort to make sure that these programs work for people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. By definition, unless you think that older Americans or the elderly, as they sometimes say, or old people, as they sometimes say, is anybody in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, that's really who you're talking about here, changing these programs for. And frankly, I know almost nobody in their 20s, 30s, or 40s who think that either of these programs will be there for them if we don't make some changes. And so hopefully people won't be taken advantage of by the unscrupulous in this debate who want to act like it's about something it's not about. This is about whether these programs are here for future generations, not whether they have any. None of this discussion is designed to have any impact on people who are retired or even are nearing retirement. And we need to be sure that's part of the discussion all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the latest was the Democrat Party having the ad that had Grandpa stripping for his health care. It was an ad. Someday Grandpa's going to have to strip for his for his health care. It was a ridiculous scare tactic. And when we've discussed this on the air here, Guys my age, people in their 40s have called up to the show and said, I am more than willing. I don't care what the sacrifice happens to be. I'll even, if I paid into Social Security, whatever I paid into, I'm willing to just let them take it now, forget about it, just as long as we have some fiscal responsibility down the line that keeps our country for my children centered. And so a lot of people my age are saying, listen, let's go ahead and do it. Let's change it. I'll sacrifice anything that I need to sacrifice to make this happen.
Well, I think with relatively small changes, you can ensure that there's still a significant, appropriate retirement program, both for health care and for retirement benefits for people who do retire. It's just you're going to have to make some changes, and there are about 3 or 4 moving parts here, and one we all understand would be the retirement age, which was changed in the 80s, and it's time to look at that again. Another would be the contribution, if you change that at all. Another would be whether rich seniors, and you could, maybe rich, you could define that however you want to in a real negotiation, whether they pay some taxes that they don't pay now. And rich may mean people who make over $500,000 a year. It could mean anything.
Yeah.
And then the other is how you calculate the cost of living. So you're really looking at the cost of living factors that are most likely going to affect seniors. For most seniors, school tuition or elementary school costs are not really something you ought to factor into that. So we can save these programs. We can make them better. We can make them work for people who are paying in today, but not if we allow ourselves to be trapped into the one Massachusetts Democrat congressman said the other day, GOP stands for get old people.
Yeah.
Right. And Nancy Pelosi's even worse.
Yeah.
So we need to be sure that we're talking about our kids and grandkids and want to do the right thing for them rather than worrying about things that aren't going to happen.
Well, we're really pleased also that I'm seeing you on Fox News, and I'm seeing the news releases from your office in D.C. You're really out front on the debt ceiling issue. What's your take on where this is going to go?
Well, I am way out front on that, as I have been on getting the spending under control. That's the real fight in the spending taxing debate. It's not that we're not taxing enough. We're just spending way too much. And I am not going to vote to raise the debt ceiling unless there is some structural change that guarantees that we're going to do something different from that day forward than we're doing it right now. We're adding way too much debt. Standard & Poor's, just this week, the rating agency sent a real important shot across the bow of America, which is we're moving the American economic stability and their bonds into a sort of a watch status. We ought to be real concerned about that, and the best place to have that fight right now is about the debt ceiling. If the president wants it extended, the president ought to be willing to do some things that changes his behavior and the government's behavior.
And so far, he has not indicated he's willing to do that.
He has not. And he says, well, it's too important not to just extend. Well, if it's so important, let's have some negotiation about how we're going to make our system work better in the future than it's been working for a long time, but particularly out of control the last 3 years.
We had a call earlier from Jim who wanted me to ask you about what he called a secret Senate trip to China. And apparently it's not secret enough because people know about it. But what about this trip to China? And is this a negotiation with the Chinese over our debt? What's going on with this thing?
Well, it's not. It's as I understand that trip that Senator Reid is leading. It's a time to meet in China with Chinese leaders to see what's happening there. I actually do think that there are some things that you just can't learn unless you travel. I know the first time I went to Afghanistan, I was shocked as I flew over the country in a cargo plane, a C-130, as the lack of roads, the remoteness of the mountain villages, the things that you can hear about, but when you see them, it makes a difference. When I drove down the streets of Kabul and saw the dust from the dirt road I was on in the capital city drift over the hanging beef on the outside butcher shops, that gave me a whole different sense of Afghanistan than I might have ever had any other way. And I'm on the Intelligence Committee. I think it's important to get out there occasionally and look people in the eye and hear what they have to say. And there are just things if the Congress is going to be properly prepared in the oversight and the debate with the administration about our role in the world. The Congress has to understand our role in the world. And on secret travel, I think all that becomes very public after travel. But I can understand in the world we live in today how, as much as possible, you don't want to have a lot of information out there about where the majority leader of the United States Senate is going to be somewhere in the world outside of the normal protection of the United States of America.
I think most Americans, the ones, at least the people I've heard of on this show, have said they don't mind the whole junket nature of the trip. They just want to make sure that we're not somehow negotiating something with the Chinese.
Oh, I don't think there's much chance that Harry Reid's going to be negotiating with the Chinese, but he's probably learning important things when somebody else is negotiating, when they talk about, and even seeing all the new coal-fired power plants being built in China. We can hear about that, but until you see them going up all over the place and realize that our discussion on things like cap and trade is just foolish in a world where other countries are building these power plants one a week. It's helpful to see, and I'm generally a defender of that, though I think it ought to be defensible. So if you travel as a member of Congress, you ought to be sure that you're traveling to places and doing things that the people you work for would understand why you're there.
All right, Senator Roy Blunt pursuing the issues as aggressively as he pursued the campaign, because it's not a day goes by where I don't get some dispatch from the office, your office, about where you stand on a certain issue, and that's good news because we know you are engaged. I think you're probably, based on my experience here at the radio station and even in TV, probably one of the more engaged U.S. senators we've had in a long time. Not to crack on the other guys, Kit Bond, the rest of the guys, but it's been very refreshing to have that communication from you.
Well, Jamie, I believe it's such a critically important time, and I'm highly motivated by just how big I think this debate is. I think it's a debate about who we're going to be for the next 25 or 30 years, and the vision of the president and the administration is we just ought to be more like everybody else. And, in fact, you talked about gas prices. Secretary Chu, the Secretary of Energy, in 2008, when he was governor, said what we really need is to get our gas prices as high as gas prices in Europe, which is about $10 a gallon, and they're doing a great job headed in that direction. The president, this is the same guy who at the same time was saying that the San Francisco Chronicle, under his energy prices, electricity cost would necessarily skyrocket.
Right.
And whether maybe they need to listen more to common sense radio, because the common sense of this is that this kills jobs, and it kills small businesses, and it kills little restaurants, and it doubling our utility bills like they would have liked to have done with cap and trade would be the biggest job killer in the history of the United States of America. And this idea that gas prices being at the European levels would be a good thing, and this is the person the president picked to be the Secretary of Energy. Hopefully they're seeing the real error of that discussion. We need more American energy of all kinds, and that can include things like just if you get an energy crunch on gasoline, there's no reason that St. Louis, Missouri has to have a unique brand of gasoline if we really having a problem getting product. And I've got some legislation to be sure that you could suspend these boutique fuel rules where cities were persuaded that there was a unique blend that was just for them. Well, that's silly. And, in fact, this legislation also further caps the blends out there so that if you do go in the clean air standards, you have to choose one of the existing blends that somebody's already making rather than have another unique product that costs a lot more in your city because you're the only city that uses it.
I guess in 20 seconds, can you describe how we can keep gas prices down now?
20 seconds, we need to be focused on more American energy, getting more of our own gas and oil, drill in the Gulf, look at our own resources, and send that message. That message around the world would help us with the speculation going on in the marketplace right now, because we're way too dependent on parts of the world, one, that don't like us, and two, that people aren't very comfortable with the long-term stability of the places where we get 30 or 40% of our oil right now.
Senator Roy Blunt, it's been a pleasure. You and
Great
your family,
you
wishing you a blessed Easter, sir.
Same
Take
to you
care.
all. Thanks for your good work.